greatly appreciate what you do for us here at Second Life. All right, before I actually get into the talk, one of the things that I love seeing is if you would put some information about yourself in local chat, maybe name, organization you're affiliated with, and so on. I would appreciate it. Many of you I already know, a lot of you are friends already, but it's always fun to see new people that show up to my talks. Of course, what you share is entirely up to you. My information is in my profile. If you go in there, you'll see a link to my latest research paper on virtual reality. Also, you'll see a link to all the slides that I have on today. So if you're interested, thanks, Tom, sharing your information. Go ahead, everybody else, if you want to take a minute to do so, go for it. Okay, while you're doing that, I'd like to introduce myself. I am William Schmachtenberg in real life and Day Miami in Second Life. I'm a research associate at the Virginia Museum of Natural History, and I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Virginia Tech. I've taught at the high school and college level for many years. I just retired in 2021, and I'm enjoying retirement very much so. Here you see a picture of me at the Virginia Museum of Natural History holding up a Triceratops horn, which I picked up and threw my back out, which was sort of embarrassing. Want to say a little bit about the ground rules. I know some presenters prefer that you wait until the end of the talk before you ask any questions or make any comments. I'm not like that at all. If some thought comes into your mind, either a comment or a question that you want to bring up, feel free to just post it in local. I do have the local chat open. I'm always happy to stop and address as much as I can. I've timed out my talk, so even though I'm given about an hour or so, maybe 50 minutes, I should be done with the lecture part of it in about 30 minutes. So we have plenty of time for your comments and questions. By the way, you'll notice that there's a red box on the to the lower left of the slide projector. For those of you who want a transcript of my talk, please feel free to click on that. And I think I threw some other goodies in there like wine, so on. All right, I see some familiar faces, and want to do a quick recap of last year's presentation. Last year, I announced that I was doing a virtual reality project on Jurassic dinosaurs, and I created a multiplayer VR simulation for the Virginia Museum of Natural History and a high school that I taught at in 2023. And the main conclusion that I came away with from that research was that virtual reality simulations, and I know they're expensive, were very popular by 80% of elementary and high school students. They just love them. And what I also found was that students could understand and learn more about Jurassic animals and the environments in which they live by as much as 32% when used in conjunction with traditional instruction. In short, I felt that VR simulations were a valuable tool for use in education. I see them as a tool rather than a replacement, of course, for educators. By the way, I need to mention if I'm not giving enough time for my slides to res, just please put in local chat, slow down or something, because they're resing quite quickly for me. All right, in 2024, I decided to switch from the Jurassic, which is about 200 million years ago, to about the Cretaceous, 66 million years ago. That was the feeling of, I was working with the folks at Dinosaur Ridge in Colorado. Here you see my website, www.evwllc.com. Please feel free to go to that website. It's got some of my older research papers on there. It's got contact information and so on that website. The main program that I've been using for the last, I would say, 13 years is Unity 3D. If you want to learn more about that, go to www.unity.com to create my virtual reality simulations. I absolutely love this game development tool. It's fantastic for creating mobile apps for Android and iOS. You can use it to create PCs or Mac, as well as virtual reality. I hope not, Esperanza. Okay, good. Esperanza, I'm not sure if I can fix voice. Like I said, if you're having a problem hearing the voice, please click on the red box, and there's a full transcript in that box of what I'll be talking about. Like I said, one of the things that I like doing is collaborating with people. In 2022, I did a trip in real life, and I drove out to Dinosaur Ridge in Denver, Colorado, and I met a number of people out there. And one of my favorite people to work with is Erin LeCount. She's not only a fantastic paleontologist, she's worked for years on dinosaurs out in the West, but she's also a gamer. So she wears both hats, which is really convenient. And one of the fun part about going to the Cretaceous is that was a time of very high dinosaur diversity. And here you see some of the animals that I put in my virtual reality simulation, a Torosaurus, and then in back of it is an armored ankylosaur. Basically, the way that my virtual reality simulation worked was you put the headset on, and then you could use the joysticks to control the movement. So by going right or left with the joystick, you could swing, turn right or left, or by pushing forward or backwards, you can move forward or backwards. Unfortunately, and I wasn't able to make this a multiplayer sim in virtual reality, and that's because of the software I was using. The Jurassic one was fully multiplayer. The one for the Cretaceous, I had to go with a newer version of Unity, which was, I think, 2021. And the add-in extremality that I was using for multiplayer uh, functionality had not been updated, and I don't know if it ever will be. All right, here's some of the some more of the dinosaurs that I included: a ornithopod and Montosaurus, and a head-butting Pachycephalosaurus. One of the things that I was surprised to learn is that there were a number of meat eaters during the late Cretaceous. Everybody thinks of T-Rex, and of course, he was the apex predator. But I found out that there were other meat eaters running around, like raptors, for example, and this guy, Nanotyrannus. And I've just started reading Peter Larson's book, and he's done an analysis of these dinosaurs and found out um, that these are a separate genus from T-Rex. And we have our first question of the afternoon. Lisa's asking, does Pachycephalosaurus use its headbutt for defense or to kill prey? The latest thinking about that, Lisa, is that it was probably used like rams today, that males would compete against each other for females, and sort of a display for females. Okay, here's some raptors. We, of course, had some raptors in them, and I was surprised to find out that there were a number of modern day animals like gars, rays, small mammals, so on, living at the time of the age of dinosaurs. And Shiloh's asking how large were these? Are you talking about the Nanotyrannosaurus or some other dinosaur? Uh, I think, well, a T Rex is 18 feet tall, so I'm going to say the Nanotyrannosaurus are the smaller, maybe 9 feet. I'd have to do a little more research on that. Okay, everybody wants to talk about cost. All right. Aaron LeCount was the person in Denver that not only picked the dinosaurs for the simulations, but also because she was a gamer, went on sites like the Unity Asset Store, also places like Sketchfab and TurboSquid, and gave me a list and said, these are the dinosaurs that need to be in the simulation, and this is how much it's going to cost. So I went and put together a budget, got some funding, and the cost rose to almost $1,000, $868. But I was able to get the money. What was especially a concern was that the time required to tour the Cretaceous environment increased from about 4 to 5 minutes to 6 to 7 minutes. And that's going to become important in a minute. The Edmontosaurus was especially expensive at $324, but Erin felt that this dinosaur was so abundant at the end of the Cretaceous, and she wanted to have a good model of it. So the simulation is done. There's a geology conference in Charlottesville, Virginia, April 26, 2024 of last year. And I was able to get a table set up during the poster sessions at the conference. And who comes over but Logan Howell? And he was demonstrating the VR simulation to Mark Carter at the U.S. Geological Survey. Logan actually worked with me in 2023 at the museum. So he knew about this project. He knew how the simulations work. So I was glad to have him there at the conference so that he could help others as I was running around. And Mark tried it and said, this is fantastic. He said the program should be released immediately. He said, I would use this with my daughter, which he actually subsequently did, and said, yeah, this was a lot of fun. It was also very informative. So when the USGS says release it, I did. During the summer of 2024, that would have been July 26th and 27th, I went to the Virginia Museum of Natural History to their dinosaur festivals. And this year I was able to get a classroom in the basement as opposed to last year, which was very nice because it was air conditioned, much bigger space, and very handy. And if you have not been to these dinosaur festivals, they are quite spectacular. In addition to the exhibits that the museum has out all the time, they put out extra exhibits. They had tables set up where they went in the collections and they put out things like here on this table, you see a Stegosaurus plate, you see a skull of a dinosaur, and so on. And then the curators come out during the exhibit, the festival. It's a 2-day event, and they're there to answer questions and show off the material. It's fantastic. And one of the things that's really nice about this festival is they don't charge more for coming to the festival as opposed to if you just come to the museum. So it's a much better experience. While I was down at the museum, one of the things that I got permission from the curator was to do 3D scans of some of the dinosaur fossils that they have in the collections and also on exhibit. And you see some of those 3D scans here. For example, to your left, you see a T-Rex skull that one of the members of my team scanned in that was on display at the museum. He and I use an app called Polycam for the iPhone 15 Pro. And this is amazing. It converts the cell phone into a 3D scanner. And it's not cheap. It's $100 a year, but I think it's very well worth it. What you do is you have a fossil with a dinosaur bone or whatever, you put it on the table, you walk around or you rotate the fossil, and you take different shots at different angles. And Polycam stitches them all together and puts the texture on it. And you get this beautiful 3D scan. It gets uploaded to the Polycam server, and then you get a link that you can download it in a variety of different formats. So to do the T-Rex skull, I downloaded the .dae format, my favorite format for obvious reasons, and brought it right into Second Life. I could also download FBX versions of the scan and bring that into Unity or GLTF. I've used that on other platforms as well. So you don't have to worry about changing the format. All of those are available on the Polycam website. And I didn't do this alone. Fortunately, the museum said, you're going to need help. And they said, you can hire up to 5 people. And that's what I did. Here you see some of the folks that came out last July to help me out. The guy on the right, excuse me, on the left is Brandon. He's a paleontologist in Roanoke. The next two are Ethan and Bailey. Bailey was one of my former students, and she was in the computer club at my high school. So they came out, and I'll tell you their role. Then I'm the fourth guy there, and finally, Bradley um, is there. Darian Bradley, he was in the computer club and was a paleontologist at Virginia Tech. He's now moved on. So I was lucky to have these guys there to help me with the technology as well as the paleontology. So when guests came to the classroom, they were greeted by Bailey and Ethan at the front table. They explained what we were doing. They said, what we want you to do is take a short 10-question quiz to see how much you know about late Cretaceous dinosaurs and the environment. I don't know of any time this has ever been done. I was fortunate to have enough helpers to actually pull this off. So they gave out the quizzes and they were numbered, which was very helpful. Not only am I getting data about how much the guests know when they step into the museum, but I've also got a way of keeping track of who's next. And we had a lot of people show up for the VR. It was very popular. And I'm glad we had some kind of number system going on because I literally kept to those numbers. Otherwise, I think it would have had a riot of people trying to get to the VR setup. And here's what it looked like. You see a mother with her son there. And there's Mr. Bradley. He was one of my helpers. We used gaming rigs that were hooked by a USB cable to a Quest 2 headset. And he was able to control it and see on the screen what the child was seeing in the headset. So he was telling me a little bit about the dinosaurs and also about the environment. And when they were done with the simulation, then they went back to here's Brandon, and he would give them the pre-quiz, post-quiz, and they would answer 10 questions again, and then he would go ahead and grade them. So in real time, with all this help, guests when they came in were told how much they knew about the late Cretaceous. Then they did the VR experience, and they got a post-quiz. And vast majority of guests to the museum went up by quite a bit. Okay, so here's the bad news. I was a victim of my own success. I was warned about this. My VR simulation was too long, 6 to 7 minutes. We weren't so bad in the morning, but by the afternoon, as more and more guests finished seeing the exhibits, they came down to my classroom, and I was just overwhelmed. I probably had 100 people there, and it just became too much. We set up another headset, and Mr. Bradley here ran group sessions where he basically showed off the software and answered the questions. It wasn't as gee whiz as the VR simulation, but at least we were able to show some people what was in the simulation. And Shiloh's asking, how long are the students allowed to participate with the headset? Well, Shiloh, to get a really good tour of the simulation is 6 to 7 minutes. And both the museum and Dinosaur Ridge said that was too long. I thought I was going to add another headset. I had that planned to cut down on the wait time, and it didn't work. That third gaming rig for some reason was not working with the Rift. So we ran into technical problems, not only with that, but the two quests that we did have were constantly running into tech problems. So my main job the day of those festivals was running between the headsets and resetting them so the next guest could go in. What the big surprise was that parents were willing to put little kids into VR. In 2023 and 2024, my whole team said, look, Meta, aka Facebook, does not recommend little kids going into their VR headset. They recommend 13 as being the cutoff age to use virtual reality. Meta subsequently has dropped that to 10 with parent permission. And every parent we talked to said, we don't care, strap it on my kid's headset on the head. And in fact, probably one of the most popular things I saw going on was we'd put the headset on the kid, and then the parent would take a picture. So I'm going like, days of kids with Santa is no longer, it's now kids in VR, which I thought was cool. All right, let's talk about results, because that was the nice part of this study is I got a lot of data. 111 guests were given the pre-quiz, a VR demo, and then a post-quiz. And the end result was we saw a 32% increase in dinosaur knowledge using virtual reality. I think you all know dinosaurs are excite kids to begin with, and then when you're doing it in VR, that's just doubling the excitement. The big surprise was the age of children that were participating in this study. We literally had kids as young as 2 year olds. The parents wanted to strap it on the kid's head. The average age was around 11. And the other result that we saw was 87% of participants showed some increase in dinosaur knowledge. And I do point out that for the little children, many of whom, of course, you're talking 2, 3, they're not even reading yet. Parents were allowed to help the kids with the quiz. All right, Dex is asking, kids in VR might be good, but for adult apps, it is just a nightmare. You know, that is very true, Dex, and I'm sympathetic to that. I've heard that you have to be really careful. Like we've got some VR apps with zombies in them, and there have been studies. Was it Tom? I know it was Tom or George was telling me there was actually a study where they let kids go in and with zombies, and the kids actually thought that zombies existed in real life. That they had trouble distinguishing between the VR and real life. I am sympathetic to that, and I don't have a lot of gore in my. I could show dinosaurs eating the guts of dinosaurs. Just don't do that. Do your kids give you a headache, Dex? I was a teacher, Silo, for 33 years. I'm just kidding. What do you think? All right. Liz is asking, was there an increase in parent knowledge on dinosaurs? That's a really good question. We tried to look at were adults learning better than the children, and I only had a couple of adults willing to answer that. I did have some try. I have the data somewhere. I could look at it. My gut feeling is I think the kids actually did better than the parents, although realize that the adults were allowed to help the children with the quiz. And I just had to do that because, like I said, a number of the children were just too young. They couldn't even read, let alone handle the vocabulary on the quiz. All right. And Dex, I play poker VR, and there's a lot of kids. Okay. Um, don't have kids yet. Okay. No guts, no glory, Shiloh's saying. All right, let's go on to the next slide. So what's coming up next in 2025? Certainly, I have learned my lesson. The VR sim has to be shortened to allow more guests to tour the sim. I don't want to have a repeat of 2024. So I'm looking at a simulation next for this coming summer. It's already been approved for the museum. That will only be a minute or two so that we get them in, put it on the head, and then let them have the experience and then move on to somebody else. I'm going to show you in a minute what I'm thinking. The other thing is that I'm going to ask the people at the admission desk for the museum to encourage guests to come to my VR simulation first. It's very popular, and the mistake I made last year, because again, this is best practices, the guests were touring all the museum exhibits, and then they were coming to the VR thing. And I would have it do the opposite, come to VR first, and then if there's a crowd, go back and do the exhibits. All right, Shiloh's asking, have you considered integrating the eco environment into the setting, dinosaurs and habitat? Yeah, Shiloh, a lot of thought was given to the environment. And for the Jurassic, that was a nightmare because the Jurassic environment was very different from a modern day one. The good thing with the Cretaceous is that you're getting close enough to modern day that you have similar trees and plants and so on. So it was a lot easier to get a nice looking environment for the Cretaceous rather than the Jurassic. The artistic view of the Cretaceous, it looks a lot better. The graphics are a lot better in the Cretaceous than it was for the Jurassic. I did create a multiplayer version for the Late Cretaceous sim. It wasn't virtual reality, but it does run on the PC. So I was able to log in and run around, okay, with other avatars. And that was an interesting learning experience because I'm running my avatar around and this marsh and plant rich environment, and the avatar got stuck. And I'm going, that's not a glitch. That's telling me something realistic. That if we could actually go back to the late Cretaceous, humans wouldn't want to do that because if you look at your feet, the cross sectional area of your feet is not very big. And so your weight would push you down and you get stuck in the mud in the marsh and stuck with all the plant material as well. And then you would be victim to whatever nasty predators happen to be in the environment, whether it was a raptor or a T-Rex or a nanotyrannus. So there was some good learning activities that I got from it. Not so much tar, that's sort of Ice Age decks, but certainly a marshy environment in the Cretaceous. The Late Cretaceous program is also going to be expanded in 2022-25, so that there'll be a modern day environment to go run around and look for dinosaur bones. And that's what you see here. And then you can go back in time. And this program, I do have a demo ready for those of you that want to try it. I'm going to say more about that in a minute. It's the only sim that I know of that's got a geologic map in it, and that's to pay homage to John Brock of the U.S. Geological Survey, who encouraged me to incorporate geologic maps, okay, into all of my simulations. And the beauty of a geologic map, it's shown in the bottom lower part, is it shows you the geology, the age,
Right.
but it shows your
Yay.
position and where dinosaur bones might be found. So it's a great guide to it. Thanks, Shiloh. I do like.
Can I ask you something in voice? Do you show uplifting? Do the mountains kind of grow, or are they already already up there when they're in the South Dakota?
That's a great idea. I've seen there was one simulation that I went to in England where you could actually raise the mountains, or you had like a cross-sectional view. No, I guess it might be possible to do something like that if you were to edit the terrain. That's not a bad idea. Let me think about that. Because yeah, I mean, you could see like a cross-sectional view of the mountains. Yeah, plate tectonics, good idea. All right. In addition to running around and collecting bones that's supposed to be South Dakota. This is supposed to be an area in South Dakota, which is where Peter Larson did his work and found Sue the dinosaur. Once you find the dinosaur bones, you'll have an inventory, and you can literally drag and drop the bones onto the skeleton. And one of the things that I talked with the curator about, and also Aaron LeCount, Dinosaur Ridge, is we really need to teach kids as young as possible dinosaur anatomy, and that's what this does. When you drag a bone out onto the skeleton, where it goes lights up in green. And there are three settings: easy, hard, and no, easy, medium, and hard. On easy, okay, when you drag the bone out, it'll magically attach itself to the skeleton. So you don't need to know anything about anatomy of dinosaurs. The program will show you where the part goes. And then once the player gets good at it, you see the gear, you click on that, and you can set it medium or hard. Hard is really hard. And you have to drag it to the right space. So I'm working with a programmer in Vietnam, interesting enough. The guy is amazing. His name is Quang, and he's the one that came up with this. You can even rotate the dinosaur around and drag him in 3 dimensions. The focus and yeah, I'm getting some more questions in here. Michelle's asking, evolution, dinosaurs became birds. Well, some people say dinosaurs are birds. And Shiloh, yeah, that's what all this anatomy is leading up to, is once you understand the anatomy of dinosaurs, then you can start talking about classification. And that's what I'm working on next, is how do you classify dinosaurs? How do you create a phylogeny or family tree? And certainly dinosaurs and birds would be on there. Dinosaurs and birds are related, interestingly, because they both have hollow bones. They lay eggs. They both had feathers. But the hip structure, interestingly enough, is totally different between meat-eating dinosaurs and birds. So that would be cool to put in there. Um, and I'm getting more questions on the puzzle, so let's go back here. Shiloh is still no. Lisa's can it be set so it adjusts to your talent at doing the puzzle? Yeah, there's a gear up there that you can adjust to make it harder or easier. There's like 3 settings that are there. All right, so let's talk about what's coming up. Instead of doing the Jurassic or the Cretaceous, those of you familiar with the Mesozoic, the last time period is the Triassic. And that's what we're going to be focusing on in 2025. The reason the Triassic was selected is we have dinosaur footprints in Triassic rocks in Virginia. We also have lots of fossils from the Triassic period. So I started to do some research on it. One of the main dinosaurs that lived during the Triassic is Coelophysis. And one of the things the students asked for is a pet dinosaur. They want to know, can you put a pet dinosaur in your simulation? I said, of course. And there's 2 ways that you could do it, I thought of. One was if you just did a PC version, you could have an avatar running around and interacting with the dinosaurs. Here you see a little boy playing around with a Coelophysis, and there are keyboard commands. So when you type a letter on the keyboard, the dinosaur responds to it. So if you type D, the dinosaur will drink from the water. E, you eat. H, it hides, and so on. And that's all done with the animation controllers in Unity. And George is saying there's a parallel between paleontology and cosmology. Look for partial evidence from the past and assemble the puzzle pieces. Cool. The other way that you can do it is VR. And I've got a VR simulation for the Triassic in which you can actually wrap your arm around the Coelophysis. And I played around with this just a month ago. You log in with the headset and you see an agitated Coelophysis. And I suspect a dinosaur would be quite angry if he came in front of a human. And if you have the guts, you walk up to the dinosaur and you hug him with the virtual reality hands, and you can trigger a change in the behavior where he starts purring like a kitten. It's so cool. I can't wait for the kids to try that. Which dinosaur became the dog, which we eventually did? Shiloh, I don't think that would be a dinosaur. That would be a wolf, I think is where dogs came from. Canines. All right, so of course, all of us here love virtual worlds, and one of the beauty parts of that is in-world collaboration. Here you see me running around the area of South Dakota with Jenny Borst. I joined the Southwest Paleo Society and met Jenny. She lives in Arizona, but she's also worked at New Mexico at the Ghost Ranch. So when I said I want to do a simulation for the Triassic, she said, boy, I've got great information for you. She sent me a number of paintings and reconstructions. She said, here are the animals that you want to put in your simulation. Here's where you're going to get them, either on the Unity Asset Store or Sketchfab, whatever. Gave me links and prices that I could put into my budget. Jenny has just been absolutely fantastic in helping me improve the simulations. Love working with people in that regard. And this is what my latest simulation looks like for the Triassic. I went up to Connecticut and met with a ranger at Dinosaur State Park up there. And he said, we love simulations. What we want is a simulation for the Triassic, late Triassic, and early Jurassic. Those are the rocks that they have there. And specifically to talk about rift valleys. So at the end of or during the Triassic, North America and Africa start pulling apart. Prior to that was Pangea, the supercontinent. So North America and Africa, they pull apart and they form these rift basins as the blocks slide down. And in the middle of the rift basins, you start producing these freshwater lakes, which presumably were water sources for the dinosaurs. There were also phytosaurs, these alligator and crocodile looking animals that were running around. And in Virginia and North Carolina, we have swimming reptiles called tannies that are in these beds, along with fantastic insects. The Virginia Museum spends a lot of time and research just preparing these beautiful fossils from the Triassic. All right, so time for some conclusions. Virtual reality sims, as I have said last year, are very popular with students and cheap and parents, and they can greatly increase the learning experience. In my case, it was around 32%. And I fully admit that the technology is not cheap. I get that. But we're here to discuss the best practices in education in virtual worlds. And I hope we don't end up being the cheapest. That's what I hear a lot of is, oh, virtual reality is just too expensive. And I think that's going to change in a couple of ways. First of all, I pay taxes. I'm not an advocate of raising taxes to put VR headsets in schools. I'm an advocate of reallocating millions of dollars spent on standardized testing to more effective teaching strategies. So that's my message on my soapbox, which I appreciate Linden Labs giving me the opportunity to say that. I also think that technology is going to get cheaper. More and more, I think if we can get away from gaming rigs and link cables and VR headsets and loading everything on a VR headset, obviously that's going to dramatically drop the price of this technology. And I think we're moving in that direction. It's just, in my case, it's really hard to cram all these graphics into a VR headset, which is basically an Android operating system, running on this hardware. All right. If I've excited you and you'd like to try this on your own, by all means, please feel free to contact me. I was so surprised last year. I didn't get anybody emailing me and say, hey, I love this software. Can I try it? By all means, let me know. I still have the Jurassic Sims available. The Late Cretaceous one is both PC and VR. Like I said, you do have to have a VR ready gaming rig, link cable, and the Quest or Rift in order to do this. But by all means, try it. Like I said, if you just have a PC, I can send you the version of that. Unfortunately, I saw George here. I know he's got Macs. I don't have a Mac version of these software programs. But
can I ask Bill? You remember during the pandemic, about 2020, maybe 2021, you were working on a web-based game.
Yes.
What happened to that? What happened to that? And secondly, when you're talking about web-based things, have you reached out to companies like NVIDIA to get either a grant or to just tell them your requests and needs to help improve computer-based learning as a strong educational tool and not just a game?
Shiloh, I hoped you wouldn't bring that up. It's sort of a sore point.
Sorry. Okay, what about the video? I don't want the sore point. I'm sorry, I didn't realize it was a sore point. But what about reaching out to someone like NVIDIA?
That I was working with Yvonne DeBandy at 3D Web Worlds, and I loved her stuff. And she was a former educator. She was really trying to do the right thing and crank out cool virtual world programs for the Chromebook. And unfortunately, the reason why I say it's sore is, unfortunately, schools didn't buy into it. They went for Zoom and they went for Canvas and other LMSs, even though 3D Web Worlds framed into those LMSs. And she never got any traction. And so as a result, unfortunately, I was told 3D Web Worlds is pretty much shut down. There's another company in Germany, Cyber Lounge. They're trying to get something up. They're in alpha. But they've got an amazing virtual world that I hope gets released. The navigation is amazing in Cyber Lounge. I've tried it and I said, man, I'd love to work with this. And I even asked if I could be an early developer, and I said it's not ready yet. So stay tuned for that. But Charlotte, I totally agree with you. It would be really cool if we could do more of this in a web-based application. I think it's coming. It's just a matter of time. I know
Well,
that I know Midori's here, and I know the Lindens are trying to get Second Life in to run on like Chromebooks and so on. We've talked about that. Um, you can ask them. But yeah, we can talk more, Shala.
well, because and Ilsa's asking you this question about having a 3D panorama tour online, which you haven't had time to do, but I wish you would. But I just really think that there are some collab with Germany. Keep pushing. Have George and everybody write and say that you'd be the best person to collab with them. I think it'd be a great idea because not everybody has the sophisticated PC that they can do the full, interactive stuff. That being an online interactive would be really cool.
Yeah. Ilsa, yeah, wouldn't it be cool if there were museums with 3D? The answer is there are. I have 3 museums on Second Life, courtesy of I used to say Science.
It's Sciencia.
Yeah,
So,
I
yes.
appreciate George giving me space on his sim. And if you
We're waiting for
me, and I'll
the museum. We're waiting for your fourth. Yeah. We're waiting for the 4th museum day. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'm waiting for the 4th museum too. All right. Yeah. So by all means, if you haven't been to my museums on Second Life, message me. I've got all the links here. Actually, they're all in one spot. So thank you very much for coming to my presentation. Here's my contact information. Just go to my website, evwllc.com, and you'll get all my contact information, old papers, and what I'm going to be researching. Does anybody have any more questions? If not, I'm going to get off of the stage.
No, this is really great, Dave. Thank you so much. We look forward for updates coming up at Sciencia talks with you. Okay.
Sure, absolutely. And Charlotte, thank you, and the rest of you also for your questions.